Now, the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies has published a white paper for public which is aimed at revamping South Africa's current Broadcasting Act. This is in an effort to boost the powers of the South African Broadcasting Corporation, the SABC, to reflect the growing audiovisual content services market in the country. Now, to better understand how the proposed changes will impact on the operations of the public broadcaster, we are joined in via Zoom by William Bird, who's a director at Media Monitoring Africa, on the line. William, thank you so much to you. Thank you so much for joining us then this afternoon. I suppose the top line view from you with regards to this will be quite interesting. It just came out, I think, as well, just late last week into this week then as well. That paper, how significant is it in its current form in terms of growing audiovisual content in the market and the role of the public broadcaster? Your thoughts?
Well, good afternoon. I think it's hugely significant, I think it's because it sets out an entirely new framework for how we deal with what has previously been called just our broadcasting. So we no longer talk about that. We talk about audio and audiovisual content services. We've been dealing with policy that's around 20 years old, so it's clear that we needed an update. And this draft white paper really does go and deal with so many different issues that we needed to be addressed. And it signals a very strong, very positive shift, I think, from government to recognizing our digital future. So I think that there are a number of things that are going to probably be controversial. The one, obviously, around the funding of the SABC is one of those that's going to generate a lot of discussion. But I think that there are a number of really important and very positive things about this that recognize that we have to move in a very different direction as a country. And to that extent, anyone who's involved in this sector is going to need to read this bill, engage with it, and think through some of the ideas. I think that broadly speaking, its point of departure is spot on. They talk about the importance of diversity, about sustainability, the importance of digital media freedom. So the key elements that help frame a piece of potential legislation and sets it off on the right footing. So I think that for a white paper, this is certainly one of the most progressive white papers we've seen for decades.
Quite interesting then. I mean, the operating models that they're looking to change as well, the funding of the SABC, as you made note of as well. How big a deal is that, and what exactly are some of the changes that may even be proposed? What are they looking at here?
So there are a number of things. Some of them are around providing a fund for local content. I mean, this idea of a local content fund, has been battered around for at least the last 2 decades, and now this puts it into a nice, fairly concrete term that's there. You've also got the idea, of course, about making sure that the SABC gets paid for having their services on the subscription TV services. So currently, those services are given to multi-choice, and they're not charged to run SABC services. And of course, they bring in a significant audience share. So from the SABC perspective, this is a really important shift to try and bring in additional revenue to make their mandate a little bit more sustainable. And of course, if you're the multi-choice, you're going to be less than entirely thrilled to see that this has made it into the white paper. Then again, the whole purpose of this is that people can look through these things, they can engage, they can debate and discuss until we get somewhere that's broadly agreed upon. At least that's what we have to hope. But I think another key element is that they've retained the importance of the regulator. They also recognise that it needs to be strengthened in terms of capacity and resources and just its general functioning.
One thing, though, is that we've seen the likes of MultiChoice get a stake by Canal Plus to sort of take over that French conglomerate there as well in the media space, taken over a small portion. I think it was around 6.5% or so. Do you see a similar thing sort of happening in this case? I mean, just perhaps increasing foreign ownership in South Africa's broadcast or media space?
So the bill, in fact, covers, or the white paper, I should say, forgive me, the white paper, in fact, does cover those areas around foreign ownership. So that's an important thing to consider. And, I guess in South Africa, MultiChoice has always been, well, not always, but it's been, the biggest show in town in terms of subscription television. And they still are, effectively the de facto monopoly. That said, they're facing increasing competition from Netflix. So we've seen them talking about a partnership with Netflix, and as you pointed out now with Canal Plus, taking up a higher level of ownership of their stock. So obviously they are thinking through where things are likely to go. So, I think that we have to hope that they're able to contribute and continue to contribute to South Africa's economy in terms of providing and supporting local content, but also that we have an independent public broadcaster. So I think, you're seeing what's happening in the UK and in other so-called developed nations where their public broadcasters are under huge pressures because people are saying, well, how do we fund this thing? And so, to that extent, we're not any different. But what is clear about all of them is that if you want to have a chance of having a real democracy, it is absolutely critical that you have an independent, fully functioning public service broadcaster. You just, these days, having a functioning democracy without one is just about near on impossible.
There are so many other elements here, and government is also proposing must-carry content to ease competitive conditions for the public broadcaster. Will that must-carry content actually hurt in any way?
Well, MultiChoice will argue that it's going to hurt them because they're going to have to pay quite a lot of money for that content. Currently, they're getting most of it for free. And again, that's going to be one of the biggest revenue sources for the SABC. But given that MultiChoice is now in the majority of homes in South Africa, it would make sense, on that level, to look at some way of leveraging that network. Either they can look at collecting the license fees for and on behalf of the public broadcaster, or possibly or they could be looking at being charged for those for having their channels. They are still the biggest audience drivers for the DSTV bouquets.
So interesting is this space. Look, the funding model certainly needs to change. How things are carrying on at present certainly cannot continue. William Bird, appreciate the time though. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and giving us a sense of direction when it comes to this one. We await more then from the minister there, that's Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, to give us a little bit more when it comes to this. The Department of Communications and Digital Technologies publishing that white paper for public review then on revamping South Africa's current Broadcasting Act. I think this will be of massive debate very soon and should be one to certainly look out for.